Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thanks, Gertrude. It's lovely to be here with you. My name is Frances Smith. I'm based in Melbourne. I'm an educator. I've been in education for 42 years. And my story is that I decided at the age of 4 that I would become a teacher, and I never wavered from that. And there's lots of thinking around that as an adult, why that occurred, I don't know, but I never really changed my mind. And so I've worked through in primary schools for 40 years. I was in primary school for 40 years. I worked as a classroom teacher. I had lots of opportunities to experience many, many different ways of learning and working with students and families. I worked in multi-age learning, which is where you have several classes in the one class. A lot of people don't like that, but I absolutely loved it. I worked in intervention for a very long time. For a long time, there was an intervention program called Recovery, which came out of New Zealand and actually went all around the world. And I was trained in that role, and it was based in literacy, and it was working with grade 1 children, grade 1, 2 children who had not yet learnt to read, and it was an intervention to get them moving, so to speak. It was a very significant role that I played. I had intensive training before I qualified, and then through all the 14 years of doing that program, it was university level training that we're having ongoing throughout the year. So it was a terrific program. I moved into working with refugee children. I taught English as a second language. I would have worked with refugee children for a good 30 years. And, you know, some of those experiences were very telling. And all of these experiences help you grow as a professional, as an educator. You take all of these challenges and you grow with them, you learn. My goal when I started teaching, my very, very first day of teaching, I promised myself that I would learn something new every day. And I didn't care where I learned it from a parent, a student, a colleague, or I just learned something new. I found out something new myself. And I stuck to that goal every day of my teaching career. And it was a really important goal for me to achieve, because I really feel that as an educator, you need to grow and learn all the time, because we hold these children's lives in our hands. We shape their future. And therefore, we must be really cognizant of that, and we must be aware of what it is we are doing and saying, what we are modelling. We need to be current with everything that's happening around us in the community, in the country, in the world. And so that was a really big goal. And still now, as I work in my business, Shine Your Light Learning, that's something that I work toward every day, that I find out something new every day relevant to work that I'm doing. So in my ongoing journey, I continue to work teaching refugee children how to speak English, but also just children who've come in from other countries, who've immigrated, and I would teach them how to speak English. I then moved into diversity, which is where you work with children with special needs. And part of that came with the refugee children, especially in the latter years, in the latter part of from 2000 onwards. There was a lot more children coming in with trauma from war zones. And so that was really relevant to the work that I was doing with them, because some of them couldn't learn. So I needed to find a way to work with them to help them learn to live in a new culture and a new society, and to help them understand that at least when they were at school, they were in a safe place and that they were safe with me, and I could help them understand, how to ask for something, how to communicate with other people, other children, with their teachers. And so diversity was a really, really big role, not just working with those children, but all children with special needs. And I worked across several schools in that role. And sometimes I was literacy leader while I was also diversity leader, which in itself was challenging, but in another way worked well, because often those roles went together. Often those two roles work together, because often children who have difficulty learning would be having difficulty with their English and their reading and their writing and all that type of thing. So it's been a quite diverse career. The highlights have been just simply seeing the joy in the children's faces when they just get it, when they finally understand what they've been learning, or when they understand that they can do something on their own. And that in itself is a lesson every day, because not every child learns the same way. And finding that other way for them was always a learning journey, not a task, but a journey. And I firmly believe that for educators, teaching is a learning journey. You walk alongside the children. You walk with them on the journey. It's not about standing at the front of the room and saying, do this, do that. It's about walking with them and with their families, and being part of a community. A school is a community. And one of the schools I worked in for 11 years was a learning community, inquiry-based learning community, and everyone who entered the school was welcomed to work with us. And we had lots of people that were coming to the school from the local community, businesses and families, extended families would come in. So, education has been a wonderful event for me. But along the way, I came to understand that a lot of our younger teachers were struggling. So in 2019, I decided to step out of the school environment and to create a business where I could mentor and support graduates, teachers. And I mean really within the first 5 years of their teaching, where they're still learning, they're finding their feet and learning their skills and their knowledge base, developing all of that. But in the last few years, especially since COVID, there's so much change, especially in Melbourne, in schools, and there's a crisis in education currently. So I've actually expanded my intent to work with all teachers across the board, no matter how experienced they are. I really believe that our teachers are in crisis and they need support, and I'm happy to step into that role to support them through the challenging times, to work with the graduates through to the experienced teachers, to show the graduates how they can develop skills and manage in this environment, and to remind our experienced teachers of all that they bring with them to school every day. When someone's challenging you and changing the way that you've always taught, it's easy to forget the skills and that special something, that superpower, I call it, that you have. So I'd really like to work with those experienced teachers and remind them of everything that they have, everything that they've developed, everything that they bring to school every day. Because when you walk into a classroom every day, you don't just stand, as I said, and teach. You exchange energy. You engage with students. You are virtually the creator of their future. So we need to be really, really supportive of our teachers, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I am doing, working with the teachers, reminding them of who they are and what they can do and how they can do it. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on this journey with all the teachers, old and young, new and experienced. And I bring all of everything that I've learned in my career of how to speak with people, how to listen, observe, and how to work with people, collaborate to create new ways and new areas that they can explore to help them continue in the profession that they've chosen. And I always say to teachers when I work with them that teaching is a profession. It's an art that we do. And that's why I call my program The Art of Teaching, because it is creative and it changes all the time and it changes every day. And we need to be really on our toes and forward thinking with everything we do and say with our students and our families and our colleagues. Moving forward, that's my goal. Thank you, Gertrude.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Frances. It's fascinating to see that you have stuck to your vocation right from the very beginning of your career. Now, you emphasize the importance of balancing life and work for teachers. What are some of the practical strategies that you recommend for achieving this balance, especially in challenging times?
I think the hard lesson that I learned, and I saw people around me learning it too, is that in education, secondary or primary, preschool or whatever, there's always work to be done. It never ends. It never ends. So you have to be strong enough within yourself to be able to say, these are the hours that I work and this is my time. And you don't cross that. So, for example, when I first started teaching, I would work through my lunchtimes and playtimes if I could, stay for maybe an hour after school and then come home. Everything was done and I would come home and that was my time. Over time, the demands on teachers have grown, but I continued that practice through until I left. I organised my my preparation time during the day, so much after school, and then it was done. Because when you're a mother with 3 children, husband, you just can't give all the time. And you have to be strong in yourself to say, I've done what I needed to do. That is the most practical thing I can say to the teachers.
So, with many new teachers facing difficulties, what are the most common hurdles that you see them encountering, and how do they overcome these obstacles early in their careers?
What I'm seeing and hearing and what I'm being told when I speak with them, the first year, I will tell you this now, the first year of teaching is hard. You've never done it before and you're dealing with lots of different little people, energies, lots of different situations, and there's a lot of demands and you're learning. It's a very, very steep learning curve. The first year is a really steep learning curve. They get very tired. The biggest hurdle, one of the biggest hurdles is that sense of being overwhelmed, being exhausted, and that the work will never, never end. No matter what I do, it will never, never end. And it really comes back to them, as I said before, they really need to, in my program, I actually talk to the teachers about establishing what has to be done now, what can be done a little bit later, and how much longer have I got to do the last thing. It's about organisation. They get overwhelmed. They feel exhausted. It becomes too hard. Often they become sick. And I always say to my graduates especially, get onto the multivitamins. As soon as they come in the first day, take your multivitamins, you will get run down. That's common. And I think that, the more we tell them that it's okay and that's quite normal, that sense of overwhelm doesn't become so big. Does that make sense?
What I'm saying? A lot of sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You actually have to pace yourself. So how do you suggest new teachers develop and refine their pedagogy amidst the pressures of their day-to-day responsibilities?
I think if we're talking young teachers, I think being open to learning. One of the things I talk about is you need to be a really good listener. You need to, as a teacher, you need to listen to your students and observe. But as an educator, whether you're a graduate or not, listening and observing what's going on around you, asking questions. If someone's doing something different, Go and find out why and what's the effect of that. My students, I'm a young teacher, and my students aren't settling, but yours are, Frances. Why? Well, come and watch me teach. Sit with me and we'll talk about what things I put in place. So I think to get on top of their pedagogy, they need to be willing to collaborate with other teachers, go to mentors, find a mentor. If often schools set people in place, but there's a lot of attrition in teaching at the moment. So find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you trust, and who can answer your questions. Find somebody else that you can ask another question from. You might have 3 different people on staff that you go to for different things. You know, you might find someone who's really strong in maths and the way they do it, someone who's really strong in managing behaviour in the way they do it. I think that the teachers around you are your biggest asset, and use them.
So can you share some effective methods for creating positive and supportive learning environments that foster meaningful relationships between teachers and their students?
Well, a lot of those, you would hope that's happening in the school per se anyway, but certainly say within your team. So I was a literacy leader and I would work with the different grade level teams. I would always, in the team meeting, we would always, as an example, I would always get them to share what was great during the week, and we would discuss it, and I'd ask them to share what were the challenges. And then together as a team, we would work out how we could help that person. So it wasn't me saying to them, you need to do this. And I think if they could find a team or a group of people, again, if it's not on their team, but hopefully it will be, where they could say, this was really great this week, but I'm really challenged with this and this, or this child, or this, can someone help me? And not be afraid. I'm reading a lot and hearing a lot about teachers feeling that they're being picked on if they ask a question, or ridiculed. And I'm just not quite sure. I hope that's not happening. But it's very easy when you're a new teacher to feel intimidated and that you're failing because you have to keep asking questions. But I'll just say this, Gertrude. When you have students in your class, what we say to them, generally most teachers do, if you don't understand, ask me. If you need help, I'll show you. As teachers, we should be doing that with each other. I need help. Can you show me? Can you guide me? Don't be afraid. I always say to teachers, there's no question is a stupid question. And there's no amount of time. There's no limit on how many times you ask. Keep asking until you get it. If we find another way for you to do it, we'll do that. But I think that's what they should do. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Now, you advocate for focusing on positive outcomes. What are some small, everyday successes that teachers can look for to maintain motivation and a positive outlook?
Teaching's a big job, so there's lots of little ways you could do this, but I would say, take the little wins. If it's just that a child you've been working with has finally learned how to sit cross-legged or learned to unpack their bag. I'm serious, because when you've got 20 preps that can't unpack their bag, it's bedlam. And so, it's all the things you do in a classroom. It might just simply be that you've got to school on time. It might be that you've set goals for yourself during the day, aside from teaching, that you're going to do 3 things and you've achieved at least 2 of them. And if you even get 1 done, that's a win. I think we need to flip the thinking, turn the mirror around and say, I did good today when I did this. I think I talk a lot to the teachers about this. Bring it back down to simple things. The job is so big. If we keep going out for big things, we're just never going to be satisfied. I got to school early and I got 2 things done in preparation. That's a win. The children listened to me when I read them a story and we had a great chat. That's a win. They all sat quietly and ate their lunch and then they picked up their rubbish. That's a win. If they're the things that have been troubling you and you've managed it, take it as a win and know that you've achieved something great.
So what role do open-ended questions play in facilitating deeper student learning, and how can teachers effectively integrate this technique into their classrooms?
Open-ended questions are great in that it helps the children develop deeper thinking, and it also challenges you. in how you engage in learning with students. So there is a school of thought going around at the moment. It's called Science of Learning, and it's where they're talking about cognitive load, and they're saying they're taking it back to where the teacher tells the student what they need to know. And to a degree, we do that. But if you ask a question and a child gives you an answer, if you just said to them, well, what makes you say that? There's no definitive answer there. It's whatever that child believes. So, you know, I might say, why is the sky blue today? And they might say because that's the way God made it, or because it's a sunny day. What makes you say that? And so it can engage everyone in this discussion, and everyone starts putting in their own idea, and it helps the teacher think creatively about how to continue the conversation without giving an answer. Sometimes you need to give an answer. We'll accept that. But the open-ended questions, even when you're talking to your colleagues, so when I was literacy leader, diversity leader, you know, I would say to the teachers, well, you know, they'd say, oh, well, we can't do that because the child can't do it. Well, what else could we do? If you were the child, how do you think you would learn? It just open it up. And it expands those little thinking, those little grey cells. And it just stops, it opens up discussion and helps us to think deeper.
In what ways can educators address and manage the growing exodus of teachers, particularly beginners, within the current educational landscape?
It's a minefield out there at the moment. Everyone's got an opinion. You don't know what teaching is like until you have walked into a classroom.
Yes.
I think there's too much noise around teachers. I think our young teachers are being given a view of what teaching is, and they're walking into schools expecting that, and they're pretty well surprised when it's not that. When you have a graduate come in and tell you as deputy principal or as diversity leader, I don't need you because I know everything that I'm doing. I know what I know. I don't take that as an insult. I take it as a deep concern. Where is this coming from? Where did you get the idea that you know everything you need to know and you can walk into a classroom and just teach? I think there has to be a lot of reflection in the universities of how they're being taught, what they're being taught, and the expectations for them when they walk into a classroom. I think that, unfortunately, certainly in Australia, particularly Victoria, but everywhere, education is political or funding based, and that's a problem.
Right.
And that's another whole conversation that we could have, but we won't. And I think that at the moment there's just so much ongoing angst, particularly in Victoria, from COVID. There are a lot of teachers that have never recovered from the remote learning.
Yes.
The expectations are growing because children lost a lot of learning and schooling, and you've got children coming in that were COVID babies that don't have the pre-development that they need before they hit school. So there's a whole lot of issues going on there, and I think that people people in power, politics, education, whatever, need to stop putting expectation on teachers, and they need to start looking at where we've come from and how we can get our children to move forward. My experience as intervention leader and in diversity is that children who start school or lose time at school can take them up to 6 or 7 years to catch up to where they should be.
Oh, wow.
So you're talking primary, secondary school here. You've got people going into university and workforce who have missed schooling, and that's having an effect on everyone. It's a really big question, Gertrude, and it's bigger than I have lots of ideas about it, but I'd rather be part of a think tank to resolve it.
So what are some key insights that you can offer to support teachers in their professional development and career growth?
Always be willing to learn. Always, I ended up in positions I never thought I was going to be because I had a pathway set and I was offered opportunities. Take the opportunities. Be open to new ideas. Again, comes back to listening, observing, collaborating, talking with others, and celebrate the little wins. And if you can't get those wins, then look further as to what more you might need to achieve the goals. It might be something that you don't understand. You might need to study something a little bit more. But there's a lot of, stop listening to the noise around you. Nobody else knows what it's like to be a teacher. You know what it's like to be a teacher. What is it you need to do for you to keep moving forward in the career that you've chosen? And ask for help again, seek out new learning, do little courses, but also be aware of that professional time and your private leisure time that you're entitled to.
As someone acknowledged for critical thinking in education, how do you stay informed, proactive about the latest trends and challenges in the field of teaching?
Well, the thing about me, Gertrude, is I'm curious. I'm very, very curious. And so I'm always asking questions. I was like that as a child. I talk to people, I talk to my colleagues, I ask questions. I look, even now in my business, what's the latest view on X, Y, and Z? We have to, for our own self, for our progress, we have to be listening all the time. We have to be asking questions. And certainly embrace new things, practice them, and then have an opinion on them. Someone might say, oh, that's a stupid thing, don't do that, or that's really hard. Have a go and say, well, yes, this worked for me because this didn't work for me. Let me go and ask someone why it didn't. What else do I need to know? But we do have to stay up to date with all the changes in our expected role, just not in education, but as, mandatory duty of care with children, first aid and all that type of stuff. We have to do it. It's our responsibility.
You have to be on your toes.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm going to end our interview with two last questions, which are a bit of a time experiment. In the first question, I'm going to take you back to the younger you. I'm going to teleport you back to the beginning of your teaching career. If you could go back to that point in time and give that young woman 3 nuggets of wisdom about life, based on what life has taught you up until this point, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give to her?
Trust yourself would be the first one. Trust yourself. I used to doubt myself, but trust yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because I was always a shy person. So that's, ask for help. Seek the advice that you need and have faith. Have faith in what you have to offer. Have faith that what you are teaching those students will help them in their life, will lead them forward, will give them the future that they deserve. Those are the 3 things that I would say.
Right. And now I'm going to teleport you into the future, and we're going to go and meet the 90-year-old you. And she is sitting in her rocking chair on her porch, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, her dogs, her cats, whoever's going to be with you at the end. If you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
Was it worth it? And what was the biggest lesson that you learned, Frances? Because I believe it's worth it. And I believe there's learning in everything I do and say every day with the people I meet. But I want to know for sure, was I on the right track? Was it worth the risks that I took? And did I make the impact that I wanted to make on those lives of all those children that I taught?
Wonderful. I think you should just be thanking her for the boldness and the courage that you have to do what you're doing. I know I was impacted by my teachers as a child. I have very distinct teachers who pop up, in mind, who did little things that changed the trajectory of my life, my career. So thank you for your passion in education. I believe education is a key that unlocks potential. It unlocks the door out of poverty. Growing up in
Absolutely.
Africa, unless you had an education, you would never break the cycle of poverty. And the reason why I asked that last question, Francis, is a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in them. She is that quiet voice that says, say yes, say no, go left, go right. All the decisions you've made have come from within you. And as women, we need to learn to go back inside, to trust our intuition, to trust that inner voice that you are on the right track. You are making a difference. Your work does have an impact and a lasting result. So thank you for your work. It's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you today.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you. I was very excited about coming to speak to you today. So thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement, a group of women who share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, but more importantly, to empower you with knowledge, with skills, with ways of being, so we can get you from where you are now to where you want to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. And thanks again, Francis, for the interview.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.